everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be all about the lowest rated books that I've read from Goodreads and my thoughts on them. Some of them I agree, they were absolutely awful. Some of them I still think they are worth reading. I've actually done a video in the past about books I gave 3 stars to that I still think are worth reading. Sometimes the premise is really interesting, but maybe like the writing or something in there wasn't working 100% for me, but just because I didn't give it 5 stars doesn't mean you're going to feel the same. And then some of these I actually enjoyed, and I don't agree with the rating, which is kind of strange because I feel like the average rating on Goodreads does tend to skew very high. I feel like anytime or anything, I tried to say both at the same time, I see something that is like 3.9 and under, I feel like it's low. Maybe that's still a bit high, but I feel like anything under 3.8, usually I'm like, ooh, that's low for Goodreads. It doesn't mean I'm not going to read it, but it does give me pause anyway, because again, the average tend to be quite high. My average, I just looked it up on Goodreads, is 3.41, which sounds really low, but I don't always give a rating to my books. I used to not do it for nonfiction, so I feel like that is making it lower. And if you look at the average, I don't feel like it's that bad, because out of like almost 600 books, I've only given 1 star to 20 books. And I've given more 5 stars than 2 stars. So like, I feel like it seems low, but I don't think it is when you actually look at it like this. Like the bell curve is still somewhat normal in my opinion. So we're going to go through the list and I'm going to tell you my opinion, which ones are worth it, which ones you should skip. And that should be fun, hopefully. But first, I wanted to give a shout out to Established Titles. Thank you so much for sponsoring this video. If you don't know, they have a website that lets you purchase titles so you can be called a lord or a lady. So I'm now officially Lady Emily Fox. I have my own unique plot number. I own 1 square foot of land in Scotland, which lets me be called a lady. It's a really fun and unique gift to give to someone, but it's also for a good cause, because for every purchase, they've committed to planting a tree all over the world. They're working with global charities like One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future to support reforestation efforts. It's a fun way to preserve the forest because they're keeping the entire woodland free from any other uses except for the peaceful enjoyment of it. So it makes for a really unique gift for yourself or someone. The holidays are approaching. They're currently having their Black Friday sale. I'll link all the information down below, but if you use Emily Fox as a coupon code, you will get an additional 10% off. And the first 200 people that will be using it will be neighbors. They're committing to making us all neighbors, so we're going to have our own little book kingdom, Books with Emily Fox kingdom. And then after that, you can use your own lord or lady on a bunch of things, like credit card if you want to, or your dating profile. So like I said, all the information is going to be in the description box. And now let's go and talk about some bad books. If you see me looking down, it's because I have my laptop. So the lowest rated book I have ever read, and one of the lowest rated books I've ever seen on Goodreads, is A Tale of Two Cities, but it is the graphic novel edition. The average rating is 2.44. That is low. That is low. Anytime I see anything under 3, I don't think I even want to try it, to be honest. But to be fair, I had picked it up at a used bookstore and I just thought it was fun because it's a classic that seems so intimidating. And I thought, why not get to the graphic novel first? And that way I can try it, get familiar with the story, and then I won't be as scared with the big one. And didn't quite work like that, because now I don't want to read the big one like ever. I give it 1 star and it deserved it. I will not say very often on this channel to just not read a book, but this one, don't read it. It is absolutely not worth it. It was 144 pages and I understood nothing. Nothing. Again, I'm not familiar with the book. I don't know the story. I hadn't read the classic. So I thought this would have been a good idea, but it really, really wasn't. I was confused the whole time. And it was back in the day when I would never put down a book while I was reading it. I read it in 2017. So it was like really early in my Booktube journey and I finished it. I understood nothing. Such a waste of my time. And I just did it to myself, quite frankly. But don't do it. Literally don't do it. It sounds like a great idea to start a big classic like that as a graphic novel. It could have been good. I don't know who edited this, but like, why would you do that to us? It was awful. Definitely one of the worst books I've ever read. The second lowest book that I have read on Goodreads is The Need by Ellen Phillips. I gave it 1 star. The average rating is 3.15, which is still really, really low. The Need is like similar to a premise that I tend to like in theory more than practice, like in between, like, is it an evil child or is the mother slowly losing it? In this case, it's not really between the child, just her. You don't know if she's losing it or not, if she's seeing things or if something paranormal is happening. So it's like similar to that premise. And I hated it. I felt like I was losing it because the children were annoying me so much. And like, I get that in theory it's about, once again, like motherhood being difficult, like the whole like, is she losing it because she's dealing with so much all on her own? But I listened to it as an audiobook, which was such a mistake. Actually, this book made it to my list of books that made me not want to have children. If you're interested, it's a funny video, it's very light, and this was definitely high on that list because the audiobook, you had the whiny voices of the children. More like the narrator was using a whiny voice when she was doing the voice of the children. And I remember one scene, I was in the shower, so I couldn't like instantly turn it off. And it was like a whole page of like, mommy, mommy. I was losing it. So yes, I understand that it's an interesting concept in theory, but this was by far the worst one I read on that. There's another one actually further. Let's do it at the same time, might as well. Baby Teeth. This one I gave 2 stars and the average is 3.62. It's still low, but not as low as the other one. And this one is an evil or not child kind of situation. You don't know if the mother is imagining things, if the child has issues, or is it incest. Like, it plays with a lot of different things. That one I read on an airplane and I had nothing else to read and I hated every second, but I finished it because, once again, I didn't put down books as much in 2019, so it's on me. But yes, that one I also really, really didn't care for it. It was kind of dry too. If you enjoyed that kind of premise, I would recommend The Push instead. I feel like that one was done a lot better. That one was like 4 point something for me, so much, much stronger book in general. It's more well-loved. It will not be in this video. I'm just giving you another recommendation. So yes, I like that idea more in theory, I feel like, than in practice. The third lowest rated book that I've read on Booktube, on Goodreads, well, I guess so. It's 3.21, so that's very low, and it is A House at the Bottom of a Lake by Josh Malerman. I actually enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars, but, well, I rounded up to 4 stars, but there's a bit of an asterisk there. It's a very, very short book. I don't know where it is because I'm currently renovating my library, but I'll put it on the screen, as always. It's very short. It's less than 100 pages, and you're following this teenage boy who has been exploring this lake because he found a house at the bottom of it, hence the title. And he brings this girl, they go together, they kind of have a relationship, which is the part I really cannot stand. Like, I did not want to read what I had to read there. But it's very creepy. It's a horror book, like exploring a house under the water, like people being in the dark, keeping their breath, and like, it will make you uncomfortable. So there were definitely some moments of that being uncomfortable. Sometimes it was the romance that was uncomfortable. And the ending was okay, but I definitely had a moment where I was feeling really the creepiness. And I feel like I don't read a ton of horror books, well, in general, but the ones that I have read don't tend to make me feel that creeped out. This one did. So for that reason alone, I don't think it deserved a 3.21 rating. I feel like if you read it knowing that, again, the romance is going to be but that will give you that uncomfortable feeling, it's a quick read too. So I do think people were quite harsh on this one. I think it's worth at least trying. In 4th position, we have The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, which I think I'm done with this author because I've read 3 books or attempted 3 of his books, and this one was the most interesting one in terms of premise that I've read by him, but the execution was really frustrating, and I listened to it as an audiobook, and the audiobook was awful, like awful. But let's talk about it. The premise is interesting because you're following this family that goes on a vacation in this cottage, remote cottage, and strangers show up and start telling them that the end of the world is going to happen if they don't do specific things, and like some of them are not fun, you know? So I like, again, the whole like, is it true? Are they crazy? Like, I like that. And I don't think it's a spoiler, but if you really don't want to know, you can skip. But I mean, I'm telling you not to read it, so like, feel free to do whatever you want. But it has an open ending, which I absolutely resent. I feel like I don't care which one it is. Just tell me. I don't care if they're crazy. I don't care if the world is going to end if they don't do things. I just decide. Pick one. That's your job. You're the author. So this is the kind of book I think about every time I mention I hate open endings. It's awful. And again, the audiobook, the voices were very like robotic, and it just not good. So would definitely skip that one too. I gave it 2 stars because I really liked the premise, but the execution was just not good. We're going to skip a couple because I don't feel like the reviews would be super interesting. But there is one that I'm shocked to see there. I do think it deserves to be low, but I usually don't necessarily agree with people in terms of mystery thrillers. I feel like they often have really high ratings, and I read them and I'm like, no, not really. Every Value Break by Peter Swanson. I'm so shocked that this one is there. I gave it 2 stars and the average is 3.48, which is again low for Goodreads. I think it's the slowest rated one. It's lower than another one that we'll talk right after that I think was way worse. But this one, you have this woman who basically marries rich, but then whenever they go on a honeymoon on a remote island, which contains pretty much only men, she realizes that her fiance knows that she's cheated on him on her bachelorette party. Sorry, I misremembered. Actually, someone is blackmailing her with that knowledge that they're going to tell him. My review of this one always comes down to it feels like the author tried really hard to make a feminist book, but it comes out as misogynistic. That's the best way to summarize it, in my opinion. And I've noticed, especially, this came out, I think, in 2021. And I've noticed a couple authors, male authors, trying to have like strong female characters, and it never comes out right. Never comes out right. And this is, again, a really good example. My favorite part was the ending, but it was just really weird. The whole decision that the female character makes. And like, I feel like I would have been really uncomfortable on an island with just a bunch of rich men and like basically no woman. How is that not the biggest red flag? I would have been gone instantly. So that's just like from the beginning. I don't want to tell you more in case you want to read it, but I don't recommend it. Like I said, it's his lowest rated one, and it's my second least favorite by him. I would go with The Kind Worth Killing. That's his best one. The other one, because might as well mention it, is 3.61 on average, which also very low. I personally gave it 1 star and I did not finish it, which again, at the time I finished pretty much every book I read. That was in 2018. I finished pretty much every book I read. So the fact that I didn't, red flag. This one, I put it down because, this is gonna sound a bit weird, but it not only has one questionable relationship between like an adult and a kid and like step parents kind of situation, there are 2. Like, how did you manage to do this? And I don't remember everything because once again, I put it down maybe, actually, let me double check. I think I wrote it down 60% into it. But apparently this is where I draw the line, like incestuous relationships. I'm like, why? I feel like sometimes authors put things in their books just for the shock value. This is how it felt. Like, even if people were to tell me that the ending was amazing, I still don't think it would be worth it. That is not, again, the average is 3.61, so I'm not the only one that hated it, and a bunch of people hated the ending. But this was also quite questionable. I'm surprised, though, that this isn't his lowest rated one. So there it is. Quickly Randomized by Andy Weir. This is 3.5 on average. I give it 2 stars. I am not shocked that this one is there. This was by far the worst short story in this short story collection. Don't even read it. It's in... How long is it? It's literally 28 pages, and I'm here to tell you, do not even waste your time reading this. It was the worst 28 pages of my life. Like, I'm barely exaggerating. It's really bad. Like, really, really bad. I was excited because I had read a couple of his books and I was enjoying his style overall. This is awful. Awful. The next one, I agree with the people. In fact, I think the people should have been less generous with it, and it is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. This is his lowest rated book, and it is the worst he has ever written, in my opinion, too. I gave it 1 star. And again, I feel like I'm sounding like I hate everything. I mean, that's kind of the point of this video, with a few exceptions. But this is the only book I gave 1 star to last year. This was the worst book I read last year. This is the book that makes me feel like I'm like talking like a conspiracy theory. I'm just questioning, who thought this book was worth publishing? Why this one? Why this man? Why so much money behind him? Because this was one of the worst books I've ever read. Like, cliches after cliches after cliches, twists that make no sense. It's just ridiculous. The ending was straight up awful. Like, think, like in high school, they will tell you not to write a story like that. That was that bad. And the epilogue, jail, straight to jail, dude. Why would you write this? Like, no. In theory, I guess it could have sounded good. Like, you have this college student, obviously it's in the 90s, so it was before cell phones and everything, and she decides to leave school because her best friend and roommate was murdered. She apparently saw what happened, but she doesn't remember, and she sees movies in her head, she's off her pills, and like, she takes a ride with a stranger, and the blah. That's how it starts. So like, already there, I was like, I don't know, I hadn't read anything absolutely awful yet by him, although Lock Every Door, the ending was awful too. But I was still hopeful, and this convinced me to never read something else by him, but then I did again this year and regretted it, so now it's official. I'm officially done with him, never again. I have so many questions to whoever edited this book and thought to publish it. I swear, like, I could complain about this for hours. Like, you cannot tell me that year there wasn't a best or better book that showed up on your desk that you thought, you know what, maybe all that money we should put it behind another book. Okay, this sounds really harsh, but honestly, it was bad. Like I said, the worst book I have read last year. Finally, one that I don't agree with Goodreads. I mean, we're not that far, but still, considering that 3.53 I think is low on Goodreads, The Last, which I just finished, I would have never picked it up because I think this is the ugliest cover literally ever. I know a few of you don't agree, and that's fair, but to me, this looks like you gave Photoshop to a 5-year-old. Like, this is bad. Anyway, I mean, to each their own, obviously. But yes, 3.53. I think this is really low for this book. I ended up really enjoying it. I gave it 4 stars, probably 4.25. I think the biggest mistake, except for the ugly cover, I will continue to complain about it forever, is the fact that it was marketed as a murder mystery. And it is, but not really. It's a post-apocalyptic with a murder mystery, not a murder mystery in a post-apocalyptic setting. There's a distinction, and I feel like it's very important because if you go into it for the murder mystery, you're most likely going to be disappointed. But if you go into it for the post-apocalyptic setting, I think you might enjoy this because it's more unique and a lot more like chill than a lot of post-apocalyptic books that I've read. I feel like a lot of the ones that are really popular, think like The Stand, Swan Song, they feel very like male gazy. Like there's always like a lot of violence, sexual violence, like very like military, like pew pew. And this one is so chill because you're following this man who is on a conference in Switzerland. He's American, and he's like in this remote hotel. Whenever page 1, there's basically like alerts on everyone's phone that there's been a nuclear bomb in Washington. So like that's how the book starts, and it's basically journal entries of him trying to piece things together because very early discover a body of a young girl, and like he's trying to distract himself basically, trying to figure out who did it because it has to be someone there. But then like not everyone speaks English, some people left, there's obviously trauma of going through all of this, and like you're not necessarily going to like the people you're around, but I feel like it's less survival like in the moment compared to a lot of the other post-apocalyptic books that I've read. So I feel like it's unique. And there's still some surprise moments. And I was overall happy with the ending, which can be hit and miss for post-apocalyptics, I feel like. But yeah, I liked it quite a bit. So 3.53 for Goodreads, I feel like is low. I feel like it's low. It should have been, like, add a 0.5 to this. It deserved it. Kind of not surprised that 9 Perfect Strangers by Leanne Moriarty got 3.54. If anything, I think it's high because the book was awful. Did not finish it. Once again, 2019, I did finish my books at the time. I didn't finish it. I couldn't do it. Everyone was so awful. So awful. One that I also think should be higher is The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn, which 3.56, again, doesn't sound super low, but if you have seen a lot of book ratings on Goodreads, that's low. I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't her best, but I still think it's fun. It's really different from everything else she has read. It's a bit more like paranormal. But I always laugh at the first sentence. Let me read it to you. I didn't stop giving hand jobs because I wasn't good at it. I stopped giving hand jobs because I was the best at it. Which is just so out of pocket for her. But it makes me laugh and it kind of sets the tone. It's weird, like kind of haunted house kind of vibes. Super short once again, and I think it's worth trying. But like I said, it's very, very different from everything else she has written. But at this point, I think we're all desperate for more by her. So I would give it a shot if you want to. But I feel like 3.56 is low. The other Riley Sager, it's there. The House Across the Lake. It got 3.59 so far. I think it's going to keep going down. I gave it 2 stars because I was feeling very generous. Awful book. It's like 3 squished badly together. I'll talk about it in my worst books of the year. Awful. Just awful. The ending was just so ridiculous. The main character annoyed me so much. No. Ooh, a big letdown for me that got 3.63, so it's still low, is Magic for Liars. The premise sounded so fun. You have like a murder mystery in a magical school. Doesn't that sound fun? And the person investigating is the sister of the person involved, and like she doesn't have magic. It could have been so good, but it really, really wasn't. Another one that doesn't surprise me is Only Human, which is the last book in the Thames Files series by Sylvain Nevel. This is such a fun, at least in the beginning, first contact with aliens. They're all short, like A lot of the books are written like interview style or like email, so it's like fast paced and it involves like giant robots. It sounds so cool, but the last book, the author went on a weird tangent. He started talking basically about some political events that were happening at the time, like immigrants, and it's just such a weird tangent. It was so strange, so I'm not surprised that it has a low rating. One that I think doesn't deserve a 3.64 average rating is Lady Susan by Jane Austen. To be fair, I think I really associate the book to the movie. I think it's called Love and Friendship. The intro of that movie made me laugh so hard. It's just so funny. I think a lot of people don't realize that her books tend to be funny and a bit silly. She likes to write ridiculous characters to make like social commentaries, and it's no different with this one. I think the problem is that it's written with letters, so it's short. It's like 100 pages, so like maybe people didn't care for it, but I think it's worth it, or at least watch the movie. I tried to find one last one that I disagree with because I think that's fun. And the next one I gave 4-star to, got on average 3.74. So it's not that low. It's still low for Goodreads in my opinion. So we're going to include it. I just read it and I really enjoyed it. So we're here. I bashed some of their horror books. This is a horror book that I really liked. Again, short. I feel like shorter books can be a bit more hit and miss. But I want to read, again, the first sentence. I know I just did in my wrap-up, but it deserves the hype. 4 months to the day he first encountered the boy at Walmart, the last of Phyllis Pendleton's teeth fell out. That's how the book starts. Doesn't that sound fun? I definitely had a few moments I was like, no, I can't do this. I put it down for a couple seconds and then I'm like, actually, I'm curious. I need to know what happens. But if you like, again, creepy kids, and it's not a mother, this time it's a dude, so balancing things out with the creepy kids. But yes, I enjoyed it. Again, I know horror can be hit and miss, but I gave this one 4 stars, so I'm higher than the average. But again, the average is 3.74. It's not that bad, but that book deserves more love. So these are the lowest or most shocking opinions that I have for these books. I think it's fun to talk about the lowest rated books ever on Goodreads. I could do the opposite if you are interested. I feel like it would be like Brandon Sanderson. I feel like all of his books is like 4.5 up. But let me know if you would like to see that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section if you have read any of the books that I've mentioned and what you thought about them. And I would be curious to know, what is the lowest rated books you have read on Goodreads? Have you read anything that was rated lower than the 2.44? That is one of the lowest ones I have seen. So I would love to hear your thoughts on the lowest one you have read. That would be fun. So thumbs up, subscribe. I will be putting more videos on the screen that I recommend you check out, including one about big books that I've read, the ones that were worth it and the ones that weren't. And then I will include my November TBR if you want to see what I'm planning on reading this month. And I will see you in an upcoming video very soon. Bye.